So I'm at a music festival, a small music festival in New Braunfels this weekend, but I did want to still put out a video, make a video this morning. And someone recently asked me if I would talk about loneliness. Because I do, as a number of you know, I do a number of philosophy and psychology videos and videos on spirituality, things like that. Check out my philosophy psychology playlist if you don't know what I'm talking about. But I do a lot of videos like this, and I had someone request a video on loneliness, how to deal with loneliness, how to regard loneliness, how to think about loneliness. And I want to actually do a really long video at some point on this because I think there's many different dimensions to this question, and I think that this is something that almost everyone struggles with in some way at some point. But just as a little quick bite for you here, sorry if the sound's kind of bad, there's stuff going on. Just as a little quick bite, something, food for thought, something to think about. I think that a lot of, when people say, tell me how I should feel about loneliness, or what do you think about loneliness? I think the question that they are really asking, that most people are really getting at here is, what do I do? What does a person do? I'll speak in the first person. What do I do when I am desperately lonely? And most people talk about this in a romantic context, I think, although we can be very lonely in many, many ways. But what do I do if I am lonely, if I really want a romantic partner, or maybe I'm yearning for a best friend, something like that, and it's just not happening. It's just not happening at this point in my life. And I what do I do? And I think that here's the trick, here's the key. I think that we all know the right answers. We've heard them so many times. Well, you have to be at peace with yourself, and you have to find things to occupy, to occupy your time so that you don't get distracted, and find something that you're passionate about to really get into, and also realize, that everything happens in the right time, and if you go through this period now of loneliness, but one day you're going to find the right person, or one day you're going to find that great friendship or that great romantic love or whatever, right? We all know that these are the attitudes that we should have, but when someone says, how do I deal with loneliness? What they're really saying is, how do I get to a point where I have all of these emotions that I'm supposed to have, such as independence and making the most of time by myself and learning about myself and experiencing things and finding my passion independently? Yeah, I know I'm supposed to do all those things, but how do I get from this point of aching loneliness where I can't help it? I want someone. I want to be close to someone. Or I want a romantic partner. Or I want a best friend. And yeah, I can try to talk myself out of it. But how the fuck do I really do that when my heart and my soul and my mind is screaming for something that it needs? Now, this may not describe everyone, right? Some people go through life with a more sort of detached or aloof feeling. I, myself, actually am generally not a people person at all, despite the fact that I do these videos. I can generally not stand to be in a group of people for longer than 2 hours. I have to bail out because I just can't do it anymore. I'm sort of famously antisocial among a lot of my friends. Don't have, actually, a ton of friends. I'm sure that my YouTube haters will love to hear that. But I have some good friendships, and then I have someone that I'm in a romantic relationship with, right? But I've gone through periods where I didn't have that. And so even though I'm a kind of a more introverted or aloof person in a number of ways, I've certainly gone through periods where I've experienced the same thing. I've tried to tell myself, oh, you should be happy without someone, or oh, you should feel okay being lonely, or having, no one really to talk to, or whatever. You should be okay with that. But when you're not okay with it, when you're going through one of those periods in life, when you actually are achingly lonely, how do you get from point A to point B? Yeah, I know all the things I should be doing, okay? But how do I get my heart there? Or my mind, or whatever. And I think that's the difficulty. That is the conundrum. How do you do that? And of course, there's lots of ways in life in which, there's lots of aspects of life in which we know that we're supposed to feel one way, and yet we feel another. But let me just say, when it comes to this particular question of loneliness, and how do you force yourself to stop being lonely? That's really what we're getting at, right? How do you force yourself to stop being lonely? Or how do you force yourself to find contentment in life even with that loneliness? Now, I don't know the answer to those questions. And it's something that I would like to actually think about more and read about more, because in fact, loneliness is not a subject that I've ever really delved into, but there's a lot of different philosophers and psychologists and people who have a lot to say about it. But let me just say this. I am very skeptical, and this goes not just for the loneliness thing, but for a lot of things in life. I am highly skeptical of the effectiveness of emotional repression. And what I mean by that, and I've talked about repression before, but often what we do in life is when we know, or we feel that we know, we're supposed to feel a certain way, and yet we don't feel that way, the gulf between how we feel we should feel, or how we're told we should feel by others or society or whatever, and how we really feel, when the gulf between that is wide, what we often do is we repress. We take these feelings that we really have, very, very deep feelings, right? And we say, okay, I'm not going to listen. No, I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to shut it out, and I'm just going to do a bunch of positive thinking. Okay? So every time I feel lonely, every time I feel that aching, every time I feel that yearning, every time I see somebody and wish that I could be with that person or whatever, I'm just going to say, no, not feeling it, not feeling it. Life is great. I can be independent by myself. Yeah, I don't think that works. And in fact, from a psychoanalytic perspective, and I talk about psychoanalysis a lot in my videos. Again, check out my psychology playlist. I cover all kinds of topics in a lot of detail. But from a psychoanalytic perspective, all that repression does is it strengthens the emotion that you're trying to repress. Because the more that you try to stop thinking about something, what are you inherently doing as you're trying to stop thinking about it? You're thinking about it. In fact, you're fixating it on it even more. I mean, anybody who's ever been on a diet or anything like that, you know that often you get into this sort of weird situation where, like, the last thing you're wanting to do is think about this thing, but now you're expending so much energy to not think about it, and what are you doing? You're obsessing over it even more. One of the basic premises of psychoanalysis is that repression actually reinforces that which you were trying to repress. And what it often does is it drives it underground. Because if consciously you're saying, no, not going to acknowledge how I'm really feeling, not going to acknowledge this loneliness, I'm not feeling this loneliness, I'm happy, I'm independent. Then what's happening is you're taking that loneliness and you're driving it more deeply into yourself. Repression only eliminates the upper levels of conscious thought. It does not eliminate the driving need beneath. And when you try to stop a conscious thought, what you do is you end up strengthening it beneath. That's why Freud used the iceberg. Freudians often use the iceberg, and psychoanalysts often use the iceberg to describe the human psyche and human behavior. Because if you think about an iceberg, right, the part that you see, the totally conscious part, is just the very tiny tip of the iceberg, whereas what's really driving the iceberg, or what's really most of the iceberg, is that part that's buried underneath. And so if you expend a bunch of energy trying to feel the way you think you're supposed to feel, guess what you're really going to do? You're going to be unconsciously strengthening the emotion that you're not wanting to feel. And if you don't believe me, just do a simple exercise. Right now, for the next 30 seconds, I don't want you to think about a pink elephant. Okay? That's not a knock at Republicans or anything, right? No, that's what came to my mind. Pink elephant. Hold on. Let's get it going, dude. Come on. All right, so you're not thinking about a pink elephant, right? You're not supposed to be thinking about a pink elephant, okay? It's really not healthy for you to think about a pink elephant right now, so you better not be thinking about a pink elephant, and I want you to try really hard not to think about a pink elephant, because thinking about a pink elephant is really just a waste of time, and you're just making yourself feel worse, and it's not productive, so don't think about that pink elephant. What have you been doing this whole time? You've been thinking about the pink elephant, because I won't shut the fuck up about it, right? So I think that there are some people out there who are not only lonely, but they're making themselves more miserable by trying to fight the loneliness. And sometimes the way of release, or the way of relief, or the way of moving on to the next level in life, or finding peace, is by acceptance first. You know? This gets into like Buddhism, and it gets into, but not just Buddhism, it gets into tenets that we find in all religions, about letting go, about chilling out, about letting the universe take you where it will, but not being afraid to feel the feelings that where you are in life makes you feel. Let me give you a crazy thought. Maybe you're supposed to feel lonely. Maybe you're supposed to feel that pain of loneliness. This life ain't all about the good emotions. And if you're deeply lonely right now and you don't like that feeling, you might consider whether fighting that feeling and telling yourself you shouldn't be feeling it is really how you should be feeling. Instead, maybe you should be at peace with acknowledging how unhappy you may be, or how lonely you may be, or how much you wish that you would have had somebody at this point in life and it hasn't happened yet, and how tragic that feels. Feel it. Feel it, and when you don't fight it so much, then you can kind of let it wash over you, like you're getting hit by waves. But it's calmer, right? It doesn't have that anxious frenzy. I'm supposed to be fixing myself, right? I got this project, my loneliness project I'm going to fix. That's messed up thinking. And I don't say that judgmentally. Whether we're talking about the teachings of Jesus Christ or Buddha or some of the great figures of modern psychology or philosophy or whatever, there is great value that we find in a lot of these perspectives to just chilling out. And I don't mean chilling out like being okay with your loneliness. I mean chilling out about the fact that you're going to have pain. You're going to have loneliness. And you know what? I'll even go you one further. We don't know the whole story in life. We don't know the purpose. We don't know how everything is going to work out. But it may be that pointless loneliness that you're feeling right now, it may be that that's your time in the wilderness. And just like with Moses, that time in the wilderness is not pointless, but it is for a purpose, one that you do not yet see. And so I think that the way to deal with loneliness, or at least this is my opening salvo on this, is to let yourself experience the loneliness. Let it happen. Don't repress it. Don't fight it. Don't let it be another thing that you bang yourself over the head about and feel bad about. Let it come. Let it come. But also try to maintain a kind of a faith that there is more coming. There is something other than just that loneliness forever, but also that there might be a purpose to that loneliness, and maybe you shouldn't be fighting it. Maybe fighting it's just making it worse. I don't know. That's one thought I had. It's certainly nothing revolutionary. You can find this in lots of psychology and philosophy and spirituality teachings. But anyway, that's my thought. I'm going to think about it more, and I'm going to come up with a longer video on this because it's an interesting topic. As always, if you enjoyed this, check out my playlist on psychology, philosophy, spirituality, and also I've done a lot of other topics, celebrity stuff, and I always appreciate if I touched your heart or your mind or something. Give me a tip on PayPal or Patreon. The links are below. All right, bye-bye.